Right, so hello and welcome back to Books and Things, and welcome to another video, and welcome today to my non-fiction November TBR. So Non-Fiction November is a readathon that takes place every November on BookTube, and one that I really enjoy. It's run chiefly by Olive from A Book Olive, who's always joined by a few other people as well, so I'll link her and some video down below and details of the hosts. I really enjoy Non-Fiction November. Non-fiction is something that I read a bit of, but not very much, and I tend to in general read non-fiction during 2 months of the year, in Jane Austen July, where I read non-fiction about Jane Austen, and in non-fiction November when I read other non-fiction. And most of the rest of the year I read very little non-fiction, but I always really enjoy it when I read it. It's just never the first thing on my list. But I do have quite a few non-fiction books on my physical TBR. In fact, I have 7 non-fiction books on my physical TBR, and I would like to read all of them in non-fiction November because I'm trying really hard to get down my physical TBR. I don't know if I'll quite manage to get through all 7 because some of them are a bit longer or a bit denser, but I'm hoping to get through like at least 6 of these in the month. There are, as always, some challenges or some prompts really for non-fiction November this year. 4 words to help inspire you. And these 4 words are collection, industry, style and treatment, and I haven't picked out specific books for these prompts, but I have managed to loosely align these prompts with the books that I have in my physical TBR, and I think that is fine. I will probably also listen to a couple of non-fiction books on audiobook, but I haven't picked those out yet. I have been meaning for ages to read Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire by Akala, so I might get that on audiobook in November and listen to that, but I think my main priority for the month will be all of these books. So let me tell you a little bit about what I'm going to be reading in non-fiction November. So the first prompt is collection, as I said, and 2 of the non-fiction books that I have on my shelves are collections of works by various people, so I think those both probably count for that. So the first is this. This is Black Writers in Britain 1760 to 1890, which is an anthology of works and writing by Black writers living in or visiting Britain in this point in time. I think the vast majority of this is non-fiction. It's possible that some of the things extracted in here are works of fiction, I'm not sure. Definitely some of them are non-fiction, so I think it's legitimate to pick up for non-fiction November. This has been on my shelves for a while and I think it should be really interesting. I'm always trying to find out more about the 19th century in general, and I'm trying to learn a bit more about the history of people of colour in 19th century Britain, so I think this should be a really interesting read and one that I've been meaning to get to for a while. Then I also have this. This is Disability Visibility, edited by Alice Wong, and the subtitle for this is First Person Stories from the 21st Century. So this is a collection of essays by writers who have disabilities, talking about disability and living with a disability in the modern world. I heard this recommended a little while ago on Jane Campbell's channel, which I'll link down below, so I'm very excited to get to this. Then for the prompt of industry, I'm going to pick up this because it is sort of about the film industry. I feel like that's vaguely acceptable for that prompt. This is the works of Hayao Miyazaki, the Japanese animation master, by Gail Burton. So this is a book all about Miyazaki, who was the kind of leading director of Studio Ghibli, the film company. I love Studio Ghibli films. I love them very, very much. Studio Ghibli, I think, are amazing, and their animated films are just incredible, with like the most powerful, poignant stories and the most beautiful animation, and I love them so much. Like, I feel like they're the only films that I enjoy as much as I enjoy reading a book. So this is a book about Miyazaki as an artist and a director, and about his films, so I think this should be a really fascinating read. Then for the prompt of style, I have 2 books which are about literary style and writing style. I feel like that's acceptable. So this is The Artful Dickens by John Mullen, and this is my most hyped book for non-fiction November. This is the book I'm most excited for. I've been saving this book up for non-fiction November and I'm very excited to read it. So Charles Dickens is my favourite author, and reading literary criticism about Charles Dickens is something that I love. And John Mullen is a literary critic who's written a few other works of literary criticism, including a book called What Matters in Jane Austen, which is my favourite non-fiction book of all time. I love it so much. It is a wonderful work of literary criticism about Jane Austen's books that I adore. And this is John Mullen like doing the same for Charles Dickens. So I think this is going to be, I think this might be like my favourite non-fiction book of all time once I've read it. I feel like it'll beat What Matters in Jane Austen and I'll just completely adore it. I could be wrong about that, but I'm so hyped for this book. I think it's going to be wonderful. I think it's going to be John Mullen picking apart Dickens, looking at trends and like stylistic tricks and like the way Dickens uses like theme and little details in a different bits of his books. I think it's going to be wonderful. So the contents list, right, is broken up by like different things that Dickens does, I suppose. So like fantasizing, smelling, changing tenses, haunting, laughing, naming, using coincidences, enjoying cliches, speaking, foreseeing, drowning, knowing about sex, breaking the rules. That sounds like it's going to be a very exciting book about Dickens. I am incredibly excited. And then I have this. This is Death by Shakespeare by Catherine Harkup. Snake bites, stabbings, and broken hearts. So this is a work of literary criticism all about how Shakespeare uses death in his plays, and I think possibly a little bit about death in kind of Elizabethan society more broadly as well. I think it should be a really interesting read. I like Shakespeare a lot, but I haven't read much literary criticism on him before, so I think this should be really excellent and definitely one I'd like to read in November if I can. And then the fourth prompt is treatment. I expect disability visibility would probably count towards this as well, in the fact that I imagine it talks a little bit about medicine and also about kind of how a particular group within society are treated. And then I also have another book which is Plotting Disability in the 19th Century Novel by Claire Walker Gore. And this is a work of literary criticism all about how disability is explored and treated in 19th century literature. So I think this should be a really interesting read, and one that again is going to talk about medicine and how a particular subject is treated in literature. So again, I think that counts for the prompt. I'm really interested in how Victorian literature looks at disability, so I think this should be a really interesting read and one that I really hope I can get to in November. It's quite short, but because it's like quite academic literary criticism, and like unlike the John Mullen and the Catherine Harkup, this is like published by an academic press, but I think it should be really, really interesting, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Finally, I have a book that I haven't quite managed to fit into one of the prompts, partly because I don't quite know enough about it, and that is this. This is Parallel Lives by Phyllis Rose. I've heard fantastic things about this book. So I believe this is a book that looks at 5 Victorian relationships, not necessarily marriages, and kind of uses them to explore marriage and romantic relationships in the Victorian period, and also to kind of look at Victorian society as a whole. So this sounds entirely up my street, just my kind of history book. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. So there we go. Those are the books that I would like to read in non-fiction November, and which are going to be the priority reads for me in November. I'm not going to read non-fiction for the whole month because I do feel like I need a little bit of a break from non-fiction. So I think my plan is to like read these and intersperse them with the shortest fiction books on my TBR. So I have a little bit of a palate cleanser, but also so I can kind of focus more time on the non-fiction this month. I think that should be really fun, and I'm really looking forward to all of these. So that's it for now. Do let me know down in the comments if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them, and I'll be back very soon with another bookish video.